Harrison Price for Wednesday, February 26, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. This is our third show in a row without a Vancouver Canucks game.
No, we have a Canucks game.
No, but having not had a Vancouver.
To debrief.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, we did
had
Sunday. Yeah.
2 days in a row. Long stretch between games at this time of year, particularly coming off a 2-week international break. They get back at it tonight in the City of Angels. We'll get there in a moment. But first, the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, asking you, bit of a theme to today's show. We'll talk to both our guests, Frank Corrado and Laurence Gilman, about this. Where is the next top 2 center for the Vancouver Canucks coming from? Is it a trade? Is it free agency? Is it in-house? Or is it via the entry draft, which would signal a rebuild? You can vote at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube accounts. As always, Blake Price gets first crack at it.
I think it's probably going to have to come via trade. I don't see the kind of players available via free agency that scratch the itch for the Vancouver Canucks. They are real big stopgaps in terms of aging centers for the most part, or third-line character centers. The only guy that is of small interest on the free agent market would be Sam Bennett, but everybody else sees what I see. A guy young enough that you'd have him for a bunch of years and still feel confident. But again, not a prolific point getter. I think the Vancouver Canucks are going to have to mortgage a bit of their already thin cupboards and make a trade with one of their blue chippers in order to bring back a center. I think Jonathan Lekkerimäki or Tom Wielander will have to be used in order to bring back the center that they need. So I'm going to say trade.
Bold. I voted trade as well. I voted trade, along the lines that you're talking about, a package of futures, probably at this year's draft, or via an Elias Pettersson trade. And I realize that doesn't get them ahead, so I'm sort of fudging the question there. But they have been aggressive on the trade market, so I think it is sensible to think that they may go this route to fill the hole at center ice. As you mentioned in free agency, there's Sam Bennett, but he's a different profile of centerman, right? Like he's more a stopper than he is a scorer. I don't know how you feel about the Matt Duchene's, Michael Granlund's of the world, whether Tavares
definitely not Granlund.
Whether Tavares would come here, whether Brock Nelson would come here. And then the pickings get relatively slim. Not necessarily guys who I think you could say are legitimate top 2 NHL centers. In-house, if you believe in Philip Hedl, I have Steven in my mentions saying he thinks Hedl is a 2C. I mean, I think ideally from what we've seen in Philip Hedl's career thus far, he's probably best slotted as a number 3 center iceman, but he certainly showed some jump and is going to have more opportunity here with the Canucks than he did in a Rangers outfit that had a couple of centers in Zibanejad and Trocheck.
But a lot of ifs and buts there. Mm-hmm. And then when you put in the Elias Pettersson question mark as well, like you emphatically need another center to compete with those 2 other guys.
Yeah. I think it's probably too big of an ask for Atu Ratu, but I don't want to put a ceiling on the kid. He is still so young to have played this many AHL games. He has shown us flashes. But, again, as we sit here right now, I think probably more ideally slotted as a 3 seed. And it's funny because people are down for the most part on this year's entry draft. Even James Higgins, the American center iceman at Boston College, he hasn't had that great year. Probably not going to go first overall at this stage of things. I think Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman from the OHL, and Michael Misa, who's just destroying the NHL or the OHL.
CHL, yeah.
OHL, both of them.
That's part of the CHL.
Probably going to be your first 2 picks there. And yet, you get beyond those 2 guys, and maybe Higgins as well, and some may throw Anton Frondell, the Swedish centerman, in there as well as a potential 1C in the NHL. But it's a pretty deep draft and first round in terms of center iceman. I think there'll probably be some second-line center icemen there in the National Hockey League when it's all said and done. Some might only be third or fourth-line guys. Some may have to slide to the wing. But, of course, if that's your guy, he's 2 to 3 years marinated.
You're
right?
rebuilding.
Yeah.
You're rebuilding.
And we know how much the Aquilinis fought to not rebuild, including in a disagreement with Trevor Linden, which ultimately cost him his post as the Canucks president of hockey operations.
The Aquilinis and the Canuck fan base have eaten the forbidden fruit here a little bit last year.
Yep.
Competing for a President's Trophy, making the playoffs, going 2 rounds deep, Game 7 of the second round. Really? You're going to tell the fan base and tell the players that are left in that room, no, we're going to have a few-year rebuild?
Particularly because Quinn Hughes has to be resigned, right?
Right.
Like everything about the organization is to make sure that Quinn Hughes puts his John Hancock on another contract to stay here and continue being the all-world player that he is for the Vancouver Canucks. The Daily Poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, and Surrey Mitsubishi wants to get EP40 back on top. Everyone at the dealership and beyond rallying behind the hometown hero. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, that's $1,000. If he happens to hit the jackpot, 5 points would be $2,500 in savings. The next day, you got to mention Sekerson Price, and the offer is valid until the next game day. So hurry during these back-to-backs. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue. On the center hunt, just before we get into the top story in the Canucks in Southern California, Darren Dreger mentioned to us on Monday that Braden Shen in St. Louis is available, that Rick Tocchet and Craig Berube are very much like-minded as coaches. The Leafs are apparently after Braden Shen. He's got 3 more years at $6.5 million. He's got a no-trade clause, so he'd have to want to come here, but, Regina boy, Saskatchewan boy, Western Canada. 12 goals, 34 points in 59 games this year, playing 17 and a half minutes. A 33-year-old, 6'1", 200 pounds, a left shot. You interested? Does he suit the bill?
No.
Okay.
No, I can't do it.
Too old?
Too old, with too much term.
Not quite offensively prolific enough?
The reviews that I've certainly not now, the reviews that I've seen of his play lately have been that he is a shadow of his former self, that the foot speed is diminished. Cannot be. The Canucks need an offensive workhorse. They do. Like, look at the last couple of games, and that was without Quinn Hughes, but is it all on him? So that when Quinn Hughes gets a ding, needs a maintenance day, that you get 1 goal per game? Is that what the Canucks want to be? They need somebody that can shoulder some offensive load. And you can't ask that of Braden Shen at this point in his career. You've got to shoot higher. You've got to find a way to get a play driver. That's not Braden Shen. And honestly, again, we've sort of done the exercise going through the trade bait board, the pending UFAs. Aren't a lot of answers there. I'm not signing up for Brock Nelson either.
We've talked about guys like Ryan O'Reilly, Dylan Cousins in Buffalo. Everybody wants to attach the Canucks and Elias Pettersson trade to Dylan Cousins. There are other center icemen with term available on the trade market. Ryan Strome in Anaheim, Scott Lawton in Philly. But again, are those guys, they're certainly not play drivers. They're not quintessential top two center icemen.
I don't mind Dylan Cousins, but if the cost is Pettersson,
yeah,
like, are you any further ahead?
Well, you certainly got some extra cap dollars to play with, but I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I read an interesting piece from Corey Pronman on The Athletic the other day about prospects who he thinks are available at this trade deadline because their NHL clubs are trying to win Stanley Cup. And we know both Washington and Winnipeg are right there at the top of each conference. Hendrix Lapierre is a centerman with Washington. Now, he's 23 now. He was the 22nd pick in the 2020 draft. He hasn't yet launched in the NHL. 9 goals, 31 points in 84 NHL games. 60 points in 96 AHL games. Not the biggest guy either. 6 foot, 180, left shooter. Isn't really much a goal scorer even at the best of times. More a creator. And then Brad Lambert in Winnipeg. And don't let the name fool you. Well, he has Canadian parentage, father. He grew up in Finland. He's a Finnish national. He was the 30th overall pick in 2022, and he really slid in his draft year. People thought much more highly of him as a 17-year-old than when he finally got to his draft. He's only played 6 NHL games. He's got a couple of points. 26 goals, 81 points in 117 AHL games. Bigger, 6'1", 173, a right shot, 21 years old, can really skate. The knock on him is he's a little bit in and out, that the effort level and the intensity aren't there night after night after night. And it may well be that he's better as a winger. He also had a bit of an uneven season coming out of his draft, where he played for both the CHL and the AHL, because remember, he's Finnish, so he was allowed to play as a teenager in the AHL. Anyways, neither of those
very
guys,
enigmatic.
Yeah.
I love Lambert's top end. His skill is amazing.
Yeah,
like, he is on. He's got handles. He's exciting to watch, but he is in and out. He's also disappointed just when you get excited. He tends to disappoint. His AHL season last year was very good. 21 goals, 55 points in 64 games. But then this year he's got 3 goals in 39 games.
Yeah.
The World Juniors, he got worse and worse. He went 3 times. He got worse every time he went to the World Juniors.
Yeah. So these are sort of post-hype prospects where maybe if you gave them opportunity, they would flourish and realize the talent and the potential that made them first-round picks to begin with. And I bring these names up in terms of a Brock Boeser trade, right? Cam Robinson mentioned to us yesterday that he thinks if the Canucks go into sell mode on Boeser, and look, I'm sure they would prefer NHL talent, ready-made talent, but failing that, Cam thought a first-round pick and a B to A level prospect. He thought, Brock Boeser, goal scorer, good playoff history, digestible salary, thought he would return a pretty good ticket at the deadline should the Canucks choose to go that route. So maybe prospect profiles in this realm, the Lapierre Lambert realm, if you're moving Brock Boeser. Pronman, incidentally, and look, these guys would be very big long shots to be top 2 centermen in the NHL. But Pronman also did a piece on the top college and European free agents coming up this summer. There's a couple of centers there to mention. Carson Dorwart of Michigan State, who he listed as the number 1 free agent available. Actually, an Oregon kid, so a West Coast kid. Anyways, he's at Michigan State. Daniel Emerson is a Russian with Severstal in the KHL, putting up some pretty good numbers. And Jack Stockfish, great name, from Holy Cross College, another college free agent who may well sign and place the middle. Again, college and European free agents don't often turn into frontline NHL producers, but every now and then there's an Artemi Panarin, an Andrei Kuzmenko that comes around, right? And lights up score sheets. The college free agents, I think back to the that Anaheim Ducks Stanley Cup champion, Dustin Penner, Chris Kunitz, right? Came in and made a big impact. It's rare. I'm just putting them out there because if you're the Vancouver Canucks now, after the JT Miller trade, and particularly if you're contemplating an Elias Pettersson trade, and I think it's fair to say they have to be, given where Elias is at, then you're going to be looking at all avenues to try and source and flush the center ice position with talent going forward.
I think you try to look at guys that are expensive dollars per point right now. Guys that have not lived up to the contract that they have signed. Maybe their bridge contract, maybe their first big money contract.
So on the trade market.
Yeah. And try to find a disappointed team with their investment. And that's in the eye of the beholder.
So I wasn't going to go there just yet, but let me throw this out there.
Okay.
Are we getting to the point, is it becoming clear that the team that's going to give them value on EP40 and potentially solve their center ice issue is going to be a desperate club? A club like Buffalo, that we have talked about.
Anaheim.
A club like Anaheim.
Yeah.
A club like maybe Detroit's on that
Maybe
list.
Detroit's
they move some money out. They're not necessarily weakest at center, but the Yzer plan has to start. They're playing well now, right? Like the Yzer plan has to start bearing some playoff fruit and beyond. And Detroit has spent first round picks on good, solid two-way players, in some cases terrific defensemen, Seider, Edvinsson, but not necessarily the high end outside of Lucas Raymond point producer like Rasmussen, Surrey's Michael Rasmussen, good NHL player, not a frontline producer. Nate Danielson, the center iceman they took from Brandon, profiles as a two-way middle six fit guy more so than a high-end scorer. So somebody to support Dylan Larkin in terms of the center ice scoring. Is Casper going to be the guy, or are you looking elsewhere? And then there's the Chicago Blackhawks. And you may have caught defenseman Seth Jones last night after they lose to Utah, and it was not a great night on the scoreboard for the Vancouver Canucks. Well, many of the teams around them won. We'll get to that in a second. Seth Jones goes off. We're the exact same team right now as we were game one. It's pretty evident out there. We haven't made any strides to be a better, more simple hockey team, and it shows. Seth Jones has requested a trade, according to reports. We already know that Connor Bedard has shown some frustration, tired of the losing already, and he's only been there for 2 years. I mean, the losing's gone on for 4 years in Chicago, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. Are they ripe for an Elias Pettersson deal? Does Kyle Davidson have to do something to kickstart his rebuild and keep
What do
Connor
they have
Bedard?
to offer?
Well, there's Frank Nazar, who's playing now, a first-round forward, center, can skate. He's just dipping his toe in the NHL. They got a couple of first-round centers that are yet signed. Sasha Boisvert, they took him last year, I want to say, and Oliver Moore, who can also skate.
These are long-term bets, though.
Those are long-term bets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to bother prying like a Ryan Donato out of there at the same time, just to
Donato's a rental, yeah,
just to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
keeping your dream alive.
Well,
4 straight losses out of the break for the Pittsburgh Penguins, sinking like a stone to the bottom.
I mean, if
of
they'll
the Eastern
take Pettersson
Conference.
for Crosby, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Or if Chicago would take Pettersson plus for Bedard. Yeah, but I just can't see that happening at this stage.
No. The standings that you talked about, 4 straight losses for the Oilers is the only ray of sunshine out there for the Vancouver. And what an opportunity.
First time under Knobloch, they've lost 4 in a row, and guess what? They've got a goaltender problem again.
What an opportunity lost for the Vancouver Canucks. If they had won both games out of the break, rather than lost both games, they'd be 5 points back of the Oilers with a game in hand. They could potentially have pulled them within 3 points of the Oilers. Yeah. Crazy. But that involves the Canucks actually remaining red hot for longer than 8 games.
Well, they haven't done the winning streak thing much this year.
No, they haven't. 6-1-1. High water mark right there.
Yeah.
6-1-1.
They don't string together, and they're also done with the Oilers, huh, for this year. And they got 1 game left against Calgary. Not exactly a banner year for those all-Canadian matchups down the stretch in a playoff race. Well, let's get to it. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, the SoCal Double. Kings tonight, Ducks tomorrow, playoff race stakes here. Vancouver looking to avoid its first 3-game in regulation losing streak of the season. We got to give them that. They haven't gone on big heaters. They also haven't lost a ton of games consecutively in regulation. They've been very good at the loser point this year, mitigating losses. They face off tonight out of a playoff spot. Calgary beats Washington. Best team in the league. Ovechkin scores. Flames still beat them. So Calgary has jumped Vancouver to the final playoff spot in the West. Now, what I will say, and we'll get into the remaining schedule here in a second, but Flames are going to get tested here. Started the trip in Washington against the biggest, baddest in the East. But tomorrow in Tampa, Saturday in Florida, Sunday in Carolina.
It's a hell of a road
How
trip.
does that sound for 3 and 4 nights, huh? Then they head to Philly and Dallas next week prior to the trade deadline. So there is some meat on the bone here for Calgary. This is quite a gauntlet. We'll see how the Flames do. And we'll also see where their general manager, Craig Conroy, is. Whether he's actually thinking of making additions by next Friday's deadline. He's already made the trade with Philadelphia to get Morgan Frost, who's played very well there, and Joel Farabee. See if they were going to add to their group by next Friday and try and keep this Cinderella season going with the young rookie goaltender Wolf, who's been terrific. And at the beginning of the year, Conroy said, I'm looking for a centerman, and people scoffed. Like, what is he talking about? Sell off your pieces, Craig. You're playing for a later day. Well, he's getting the last laugh now. See where he is.
Jonathan Huberdeau with his 22nd goal of the season last night.
He's bounced back.
Well, you talk about the Flames schedule. Let's talk about the Canucks schedule.
Let me just finish this. So remaining schedule, Calgary has the same number of games for both teams here. Calgary has 11 at home, 16 on the road. Vancouver has 14 at home, 13 on the road. That March 12th game at Calgary, the last head-to-head meeting.
Looking ahead to the final 25 games of the Vancouver Canucks schedule, over 50 nights. Very close. 13 at home, 12 on the road. 13 teams above the playoff bar, 12 games against teams below. They do have 3 left versus the Ducks. But 2 left against Winnipeg, Vegas, Minnesota, and Dallas, which is the tough part of their schedule. They go on a run at home, 7 of 8 at home after the Saturday game coming up. That's great, but they do have another 6-game road trip still to come. So I think what the tweet tells us from JPAT is it's a little from column A, a little bit from column B for the Vancouver Canucks. It's a pretty even schedule the rest of the way. They're going to have the opportunities to get wins. They're going to have to buck up against teams like Winnipeg and Vegas still before they're done here.
Yeah. I got the games wrong. It is 13 at home, 12 on the road. Not what I said. And yes, they are going to have to buck up. And really, Blake, and look, there's still time here. But 6 back of LA who have 2 games in hand.
Yeah.
You lose this one. If you're 8 back of LA and they've got 2 games in hand, I think at that point you're looking at playing for a wild card and nothing better.
Well, you're closer to the Oilers. If you win tonight, you're 7 back of the Oilers with even games played.
But if you lose tonight,
yeah.
And the other thing, LA is 19-3-2 at home. They have been dominant on home ice this season. Jim Hiller, British Columbian, has done an excellent job coaching this team. Okay, Quinn Hughes is a game-time decision with an oblique injury. He, of course, has missed 6 games here. He joined the full Canucks practice late yesterday at the Kings practice facility in El Segundo. He started with the goalies, but then joined the full complement of his teammates.
Practice with Hronek, by the way.
And Rick Tocchet called it one of the best practices he had seen. He said they worked on getting pucks to the net, worked on creativity, Blake, and plays, and he's not a big plays guy. So here you go, Tocchet outside of the box, looking to supplement what has been Vancouver Canucks' weakness, offensive opportunities, and, of course, putting the puck on net. And Vancouver's going to need it tonight because I heard Steve Valiquette, of course, the goaltending guru, Clearsight Analytics, talking about how the LA Kings are the best team in the National Hockey League in terms of the fewest time and space chances they surrender. They take away time and space better than any team in the NHL. And, of course, this somewhat neutered Canucks lineup minus JT Miller, and certainly minus Quinn Hughes, if he's not there, I think he'll play. They need time and space.
Yeah.
They're not exactly quick on the draw with guys who, with a subtle, quick touch like a Nathan McKinnon or whatnot, can put the puck
And the truth of the matter is so many of the Vancouver Canuck offensive weapons right now are static chance guys, and you know, if you look at the way they practiced yesterday, you know, like they've given Höglander now to Pettersson and DeBrusk, which makes sense because Höglander will move and try to create chances. DeBrusk and Pettersson, and yes, Pettersson, are now standstill shooters. When they, like, Pettersson does not attack with the puck anymore. He doesn't skate at the net with the puck. So every line needs somebody moving with the puck. Höglander will be that guy on that line.
Yeah.
The next line, Hedl will be the carrier, and Garland skates with the puck as well. And then you're wondering, well, where's Boeser? Well, again, where does Boeser fit? Otherwise, he goes down with O'Connor, who's going to be the puck transporter, while Suter and Boeser are alongside. You know, Boeser with Pettersson and DeBrusk, it'd be 3 guys standing across the circle with nobody moving with the puck.
Yeah.
So they break that up, and they try to have a puck carrier now on every single one of those lines. But it does look, when you just take a glance at that, Brock Boeser's on the 3rd line of the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, and I think part of it is the fact they like all 3 of those guys better on right wing than they do on the other side. And, of course, Garland and Boeser right shots, Höglander the left shot. I mean, it's not like the Canucks generate much off the rush, Blake, so maybe more of a half-court game suits them better against the Kings tonight. Maybe they find a way to get a puck through.
But that's the easiest way to have that gap closed down by the Kings is if you're playing half-court. Skating at them with speed, way harder to close down the gap.
Sure, but outside of Hedl and O'Connor, they don't do that.
No.
Very much.
No.
Not this group.
The other interesting thing is on the D pairs, Soucy and Mancini as a pair, Petey and Forbort.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's been a while since we've seen Soucy. I can't remember when he played last. But is he going to give him a chance? Like, is that going to be the 3rd pair? No, he seems to love Petey and Forbort, but I just wonder if it's just time for in the rotation that he actually takes a look at Soucy and Mancini.
Well, and you also wonder whether they're trying to showcase Soucy prior to the trade deadline. Because I don't think you want a long a long list of consecutive scratches for Carson Soucy.
No, you want to keep him
trying
active.
to get value. And just before we leave Quinn Hughes, and Blake will tell you about Yellow Dog, Brady Tkachuk, and it's Brady Tkachuk, so take it with a grain of salt, but joined Spitting Chicklets, asked about Quinn Hughes or mentioned Quinn Hughes not making it for Team USA in the final of the Four Nations. Quote, I think he was all about coming, but I just don't think he got cleared by Vancouver to play. So a little shady business to begin with. We all know who they were cheering for.
I mean,
except he didn't play the next two Canucks games.
Yeah.
Brady, did you miss a cheerleader that badly, son?
And he's maybe the Hart Trophy leader, objectively speaking, in that regard. They're going to forego 2 league games to try to avoid suspicion of playing favorites at the Four Nations.
In a playoff race. Yeah.
Like it's not happening.
Come on.
The Canucks lose those 2 games. Hopefully they were just playing dead and aren't actually.
It's not bad.
Yellow Dog's okay with playing dead. The IPA, the big hitter IPA, tasty brew. 4 packs on special for the month of February. Look for it on sale, private and government liquor stores.
Yeah. This wasn't about playing for Hughes. First of all, the Americans didn't have an injury on defense.
Yeah.
So it was never going to be about playing. It was about cheerleading. And I sure hope that, Quinn isn't sore about this with the Canucks. Because it was just support. And I realize your brother's on the team. And I realize he had a tough tournament. And I realize you were originally selected for the team. But to fly from Jersey to Vancouver to Boston to Vegas just to be a cheerleader, a little much. One thing to keep an eye on with trade deadline 9 days away here now, injuries are starting to amass with contenders, with teams that are in the playoffs or looking to get into the playoffs. It was a rough night for NHL injuries, and don't know the full status here about what coaches have said about these guys and their availability going forward, but Chris Tanev took a hellacious hit last night, our old friend. Left the game, looked like a shoulder or a collarbone.
They clarify, they say day-to-day.
Well,
but we've seen with Chris that can be day-to-day for a while.
Rangers trying to make the playoffs. Both Adam Fox and Keandre Miller got hurt last night.
Yeah.
Nylander got hurt for the Leafs too.
JT Miller with a goal.
Yeah, I know. Trent Frederick got hurt with Boston, and that's interesting because if Boston's selling, he was a rental and going to be a prized one, right? Like he's a tough center iceman. Of course, Boston is still in the hunt there. So, yeah, as these games tick off over the rest of this week and into early next week, keep an eye on these contenders, these teams on firm playoff footing, and those looking to get in, because they may not just have to take the approach of who can we go out there and get that adds to our group, but who can we go out and get that patches the dam and provides us some reinforcements for the final 20 games in the playoff stretch.
We talked about Carson Soucy before. This Carson Soucy would be a great patch in a dam for a contending team.
Absolutely.
And, that was the thing. If the Canucks were showing better, you would have absolutely said, keep Carson Soucy. In the playoffs, you're going to need him. But now it's like, to what end? But Soucy's value could rise here.
Yeah. Big defenseman who did a nice job against the toughest defensive matchup in the game last year in that Edmonton series. I mean, Leon and Connor and the way the Canucks played them at even strength was a testament to their defensive system, to their commitment, and to the guys who drew the tough matchups and took away time and space for those two superior players. And a reminder, our friends at the Daily Faceoff will be live trade deadline a week from Friday, March 7th. They've got you covered in the morning. We'll come on and break down everything the Canucks did or didn't do. And then that night, Canucks and the Minnesota Wild. And J-Pat and Rink Wide Vancouver will have you covered. Yeah, daily face-off. That's 11 a.m. Eastern, so 8 a.m. our time. The daily face-off deadline live, the best trade deadline coverage. Okay, time to get to our menu, brought to you by Greta. Fantastic spot for all the games, home and away, steps from the stadium and the arena. We're going to have a Canucks Army viewing party coming up there in April. Pre-game, post-game, the street food menu, the arcade. Ever so popular. It's an incredible air hockey table. Go play air hockey there. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. Frank Corrado is going to join us here. We go down some of these center icemen with Frank to ask for his 2 cents.
Our brainstorm, not necessarily rumor related, but a brainstorm. Some rumor related.
Well, Shen's available.
Yeah.
Marco Rossi, probably not. But we kick that around. Also with Laurence Gilman. On the Boeser file, on what Boeser's worth and what you'd be looking to get back if you're moving Boeser, on his perception of Canucks goaltending going forward now that Kevin Lankinen is re-signed, and on where they're going to get one of these top 2 centers. And yeah, typically it's teams that have a problem. Hopefully Elias solves their problem. Hopefully the return solves the Vancouver Canucks problem. We shall see. So that's all coming up on the program today. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. The segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. My Ducks had a 2-0 lead in Buffalo yesterday and blew it. So I lost. He doesn't remember what he picked. He never does. No. Okay, so hear my mouth. You've already shouted him. The Kings don't give up quality chances. Probably going to need a muckraking goal here against that defensive system. Höglander getting moved up in the lineup, playing with Petey and DeBrusk. Jake's going. Drive the net when DeBrusk shoots, clean up a rebound. I mean, he's too good a player to be sitting on these just horrific offensive totals. Can't be lugging these around all year. At some point, I believe that Höglander is going to get on a little bit of a spurt here. And he pays plus 550 as an anytime goal scorer tonight.
The Capitals beating the Flames. That didn't happen.
That's right.
I'm sort of the eventually something's going to happen train as well. And for me, that is goals. For the Canucks.
God, I hope you're.
For the Kings.
Because
I'm agnostic,
it has been
actually.
some tough watching here with how few goals actually get scored.
But for these 2 teams, Matt, I'll be happy if goals go in for anybody. Can we just test the fortitude of the red lights behind the cameras here, behind the nets here tonight, please? And because of the matchup, the over-under is merely 5.5.
Yes.
We only need a 4-2 game here, folks. That is a normal hockey score. We can do this.
For God's sakes, Kings and Canucks.
And if Quinn Hughes is in the lineup, I mean, I think that...
Well, you're paying extra juice, though, on 5. It's minus 140 on. So,
what's that? Over is... No, plus 120.
Oh, sorry. You're in the...
No,
sorry.
I'm saying I think...
So you get extra juice here.
I think the goals are going to happen here.
Wow.
If Quinn Hughes is in the lineup, I think the Canucks can score 3 goals tonight. The Kings just have to pull their weight and get a few of their own. Plus 120, over 5.5.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Frank Corrado coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, a Canadian-owned and operated company with a history dating back more than 100 years, committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They've got mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations in British Columbia, Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center, Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Victoria. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. As we welcome in former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado. We find him in Montreal in advance of the Sharks-Canadians game. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on, fellas?
Well, just last time since we last talked to you, big Canadian victory. So, as you mentioned last week, we still own hockey. Okay.
Yeah, have you noticed the losing players going on all the late-night talk show appearances? The Kachuk brothers doing the late-night circuit here?
So Matthew did it. Did Brady do it too? I thought
Brady
I saw
did
Matthew.
Chicklets.
Brady
Brady
did Chicklets. Yeah.
They lost, though, right?
And accused the Canucks of not clearing Quinn Hughes because we know who they were rooting for.
Oh, baby.
Hey.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Like that's
And then chose to lose 2 games in regulation after the break?
Yeah, no, exactly. He wasn't.
That's not something that players usually talk about. Like you're so guarded and cautious about even your own team's medical staff, and then to talk about another team's is wild. Wild times.
They're different cats, Brady and Matthew. They are paid to annoy as much as they are to perform.
And they came from a different cat and Keith, too, so no surprise.
Yeah.
Hey, so Frank, whether they make an Elias Pettersson trade or not, clearly there is a need for a top 2 center here with the Vancouver Canucks. Some names are emerging, some more gettable than the others, and we wanted to run some of those names by you. But let's start with Brayden Schenn, who is on trade blocks around the league, of course, in St. Louis. Apparently his old coach, Craig Berube, with the Leafs is interested. Darren Dreger told us on Monday, hey, Berube, think the game a whole lot alike. Tell me about Brayden Schenn, because 33 years old now. He's under contract for 3 more years. What do you think? How much does he have left? Could he still be a top 2 center in the league?
Well, I would see him more as a middle 6 center at this point, ideally. And I think it's going to be a haul to get him out of St. Louis, because with that kind of package, what he brings to the table, the physicality, the winning attributes, the resume, the presence in the locker room, like all that stuff, St. Louis will turn around and say, well, you know what? If it's not going to be something that really helps us expedite things quickly, we're just going to keep him, because his value is more to us around guys like Kyrou and Thomas and Holloway and Broberg. So, unless you're really willing to give up a lot, more than you would think you would need to give up for a 33-year-old, center who plays a rugged game and isn't going to get you, I don't know, he's not going to be like a massive point producer. You're kind of getting him for the intangibles, I think. And that makes a deal a little more complex, because on the surface, it could look like you're overpaying. But as far as what Brayden Schenn brings to the table, like you talk about, big kind of presence, alpha male guy, willing to fight, willing to hit, willing to do things, lead by example. He's going to bring all that. He's going to bring all that and more. And I'm sure Rick Tocchet would be salivating to bring in another player like that, like absolutely frothing at the mouth to bring in a guy that does that, where it can almost be like an extension of the coaching staff in the room and getting certain messages across and doing it with a lot of credibility. But I think, there's going to be a lot of teams calling. And with that being the case, like it's going to have to be a package where you look at it and say, oh boy, like we had to give up a lot to get that guy.
That vintage.
They have an opening for an alpha.
Yes, they do. That vintage of player, that kind of player, there's a few of them available, like Brock Nelson, Ryan O'Reilly, maybe, depending on who you talk to, and Luke Schenn. Like Brayden Schenn, they're all cut from the same cloth, and they're all around the same age. But is Schenn the guy that's got the most game left out of all of them, even though Nelson's having a decent year?
Nelson's having a good year, and he's had good years in the past, like 3 consecutive years where he's a 30-plus goal scorer. So you can't deny the goal scoring ability. I think Ryan O'Reilly is still one of the most intelligent players in the NHL and has a lot of offensive upside to give. Might not have the same kind of jam or edge that Braden Shen has, and probably not as fleet of foot, but still like super crafty and intelligent of a player. There's a few other names like you'll see on Friday, and you could check any time, like our TSN trade bait board, like, Ryan Strome is going to be on our board. Nick Bjugstad's a guy lower in the lineup. Ricard Raquel's a versatile forward who can play center. Scott Lawton's going to be a popular name. Like there's quite a few center options. Trent Frederick is another one. Obviously a lower in the lineup type guy, but gives you a certain spark. So there's going to be a lot of options out there. I think the acquisition cost is what's going to deter some teams from certain guys, but I think if the Canucks are looking to add a center, it's not the worst thing in the world for them. I think it just depends what your appetite is as far as what you're going to give up to bring in a centerman.
We've looked a little deeper than just the available UFAs, though, too. We've also gone down the road of, okay, guys with term, maybe a little younger guys you're going to pay a lot more for, but, the guys that maybe just aren't the right fit. People have combined this with Brock Boeser trade talk and thought, okay, what do the Wild have if Boeser was sent home? And I mean, the Wild have a diminutive center who's having a great season, highly skilled, but is 5'9" Marco Rossi, Bill Guerin's kind of player. Again, this is based on nothing, no rumor or innuendo that he's on that he's available. But are those the kind of calls that this front office could make just to see if there's any appetite?
If that guy was available, I would be all over it. I'm a huge fan of this guy as a player. Forget about what the size looks like on paper. He plays a way bigger game, and he's really crafty, really skilled with the puck. He's so strong in like his skating base. Like I don't see him get knocked off it nearly as much as other guys who are bigger players. Like I think this guy has been what they would have hoped he would have been when they drafted him. But it's funny you mentioned Bill Guerin, because if you looked at the way Team USA was built, if you look at the way the Minnesota Wild are built, basically outside of Marco Rossi, it's big, burly players, and he is not that. So if you're trying to, kind of find a young centerman and pluck someone that might not be a fit somewhere, like that might make some sense. You just have to find something that Bill Guerin is going to want in return moving forward, which, I'm sure he'll be happy to hold on to, a budding young star centerman as opposed to kind of getting rid of him for, not spare parts, but like it's going to have to be something significant coming back, which is the case with a lot of these young guys. But, I think very highly of Marco Rossi, and I think the fact that he's had the season he's had in Minnesota, a team that not overly offensive inclined. Kirill Kaprizov has missed a lot of time this season, and I think early on in the year we would have said, well, Kaprizov is driving things, and Marco Rossi continues to do it without Kaprizov there. So I think he's been a tremendous player, and if they were to move on from him, I would be all over it.
Our conundrum has been, where are the Canucks going to find their next center? And that's if you assume there's going to be a Pettersson renaissance. My goodness, if there is no Pettersson renaissance, where are the top two centers for the Vancouver Canucks for the next 8 years?
Let me tell you something just on that. The Pettersson renaissance is not happening this year.
No,
it's going to happen next year. If it happens, it's going to happen next year, because it's got to be, take the summer, rehab, whatever you got going on, get your mind right, and you come back. But like if there was a switch that would have been flipped, it would have happened already this year. Like this is who you got. Number 40 is who he is for the rest of the season, injury or not, whatever the mental block, all that kind of stuff. This is what you got in him. And so are you going to hold on to him and hope that whatever's bothering him gets fixed, and next year he looks like the guy that he's supposed to be? Probably, unless you trade him and then he does that somewhere else and then you regret it. Like I really don't know what the right answer is with this guy. There's so many things that seem to have happened now that it's like, you're just peeling back layers and layers of the onion at this point.
It may very well be determined by the next 4 games, including this double dip they have in Southern California starting tonight against the Kings. But should the Canucks be buyers, sellers, somewhere in between?
Nothing.
What would be your approach, your deadline approach here if you were in the Canucks front office?
Boy, I'm probably leaning towards something in between. It's not a year where you're going all in, but if you can make some trades that maybe can help you for, I don't know, this year, next year, the year after, like you're probably not looking at a year where you're giving up assets for rental players, which is different than last year. And I'm not sure we would have expected them to be in that situation coming off the year that they had last year. But that's the reality. When your number one center is not chugging the way he's supposed to, you're just not going very far. Your number one defenseman is now hurt. Your number one goaltender is out, and who knows when he's going to be able to play. It's not a year for Vancouver to kind of make a run for things. So if you can, I guess, light sellers with bringing back assets that would help you kind of in the coming years is probably where I would peg Vancouver at this point. You know, you're not you're not just giving up pieces for futures. You're giving up pieces for, you know, players that can help you a couple years or next year, basically down the road.
What would you do with Boeser?
I would try and sign Brock Boeser. And I know this is the thing that you have to be careful of. It's a watered down league, and teams are desperate to find players that can score goals. So regardless of what you think of him as a Canuck, the AAV, the term, the thing that a lot of these teams are facing right now is as long as he doesn't overplay it by too much, someone's going to give him something very close to what he wants. So if you can find a way to come to a fair market value with him, I would probably be leaning towards getting that deal done. You know, he's not even 30 yet. He's 28.
28 just yesterday, yeah.
So if you get him done on a 6-year deal, that gets him to age 34, and you're just under $8 million or around $8 million. I mean, that's pretty much what the marketplace is going to dictate for a guy like that. Now, maybe he wants 7. You know, Vancouver's the only team that can give him 8. But I mean, if he's looking at that and thinking, you know, okay, Vancouver's offering me 6 years, $8 million or just under $8 million, and I like it here. Like, I don't know, what more are you looking for? You're basically saying at that point, I kind of just want to move on. And I guess I shouldn't say that. Like, we don't know what the player's thinking, but that would be something.
Well, he wants to stay here. He said he reaffirmed this week that he wants to stay here. AFP
so that's
Analytics
a deal that would say you want to stay here.
At 7.7 at 9.3, which is
very rich.
Yeah, a little bit rich.
7 at 9.3.
Yeah,
no, if I'm the Canucks, I'm not doing that. I would say you can try and find that somewhere else. And I think at 9 point whatever, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's going to pay you that. Like, it's ultimately going to be in the 8s. He's not a perennial 40 goal scorer. Like, he's a good goal scorer. He's a 30 goal guy. But you're not, like, unless someone's really, really desperate, Chicago's really desperate, or San Jose's really desperate, and they just have to spend a ton of money. I mean, you're not getting in the 9s.
Yeah, it's a lot of money for a guy who's never been fleet of foot, and the game's not getting any slower, that's for sure. So, some decisions there. I mean, Carson Soucy's a non-starter. In terms of buyer or seller, Carson Soucy's not making it past the trade deadline, is he?
Oh, I would think he's getting moved. And I think there's some teams that look for, like, they're looking for some penalty kill help. There's teams that are looking for some depth defenseman help. And, like, it's a pretty digestible contract. And the fact that he's kind of fallen out of favor here would lead you to believe that, you know, you can kind of, like, wash your hands with that. But I just think all these teams that are thinking, especially in the East, right? The East is so wide open. There's a lot of these teams that think they have the chance. It's their year, right? You go through the top 3 in the Atlantic, whether it's Toronto, Florida, Tampa, like, it's anyone's race. You know, Washington, New Jersey, Carolina, There's no team that really stands out there. So a lot of these teams are going to have to bolster their blue lines and kind of get ready to go to war. And he's one of those guys that, he's a good battler. Like, he's a good penalty kill guy, rangy, plays on your third pair. Maybe he plays better, than he has in Vancouver this season. But I think there's a lot of teams that could use a player like that.
Lastly, Frank, I'm sure you heard Seth Jones last night of the Chicago Blackhawks after another loss, saying they have not gotten one iota better since Game 1. We already knew of Connor Bedard's frustration there. Now Donato, Maroon, Alec Martinez, they got some rentals that I'm sure they can peddle here as a non-playoff team. But does Kyle Davison have to do something bigger there in Chicago to kickstart this interminable rebuild on year 4?
If he's going to move Seth Jones, which I guess Seth Jones wants to be moved, and that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Sure. Like, he's going to have to get something for Jones that is a young player who kind of fits with the young guys that they have there. And then this summer, he's going to have to go out and spend, but he's also going to have to convince. Like, you can say the piggy bank is open and we want to spend all this money, but what's your pitch to the top UFAs? Is it, you're going to play with Connor Bedard? Great. Connor Bedard hasn't really shown that he's a generational talent the way we thought he was going to be. He's going to be a star in the league. But you have to convince guys that are going to get this money, maybe on better teams, that you're the right choice for them. And so I think that's where the trouble comes into play for Chicago when it comes to trying to build their team. Like, what's your pitch to all these guys other than, hey, we have a lot of money to spend? And they have to do it. Like, they have to find a way. They cleared out all these guys, right? And they wanted to build from, nothing. And this is the challenge now. You drafted some guys, but it's not enough. You have to sign some good UFAs here. Not just mentor-type players, guys that can actually play with Bedard and play with Nazar and play with Vlasic and kind of build a group coming up together.
I got a $11.6 million centerman, if he's interested.
Well, according to one podcast earlier in the season, they were, but I don't think that they...
We'll see.
It's hard now. You're selling, like, you'd be selling that at a low. And I just watched Carolina. They got beat by Montreal last night. I did that game, and I watched Rantanen play on that team, and I thought to myself, there's no way Forty could play on this team. Like, as much as they might like him as a player, that up-tempo, chip and chase, forecheck relentlessly style of hockey, that ain't working for him. So I would cross Carolina right off the list when you're talking about potential homes for him.
All right. Conundrum continues. Thank you for this, my friend. Have a great week. Catch up next Wednesday.
Okay, boys. Thank you. Have a good one.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sick Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
And Matt, your Pacific Toyota dealers want to give you a night out. And hey, no matter what the Canucks do between now and then, you're still going to come out a winner because, hey, going to a game at any point, usually pretty fun. It's the Canucks versus the Golden Knights. There's a good rivalry building there, of course. And the April 6th game will also give you a couple of jerseys as well. So all you have to do is enter this exciting contest, courtesy of your Pacific Toyota dealers. Follow them on Instagram at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. The contest's open to residents of BC and the Yukon, age of majority. And while we've got them on your brain, pay a visit to your local Pacific Toyota dealer, wherever they might be, and check out the new installment of their electric line, the BZ4X. Spectacular vehicle, tons of cargo space, although still the right size to park in our microscopic BC parking lots. And a lot of fun to drive as well. Fully electric, HOV lane compliant. Take one for a test drive. Fall in love right now. $6,500 in rebates and incentives. 3.29% APR financing for 36 months. ShopToyota.ca.
As we welcome in the former Vancouver Canucks assistant general manager, NHL executive with the Leafs, Jets, and Coyotes. It's been a few weeks since we talked to Laurence Gilman. How are you? Did you enjoy the international hockey, Laurence?
I thought it was outstanding. That Canada-U.S. game in the end might have been the best hockey game I've ever watched on TV in terms of the pace and the skill level that was played. It was off the charts.
Yep.
You've got
sport at its best.
You've got great big picture ideas. What do we do now we've got the every other year schedule? If you're Gary Bettman, what do you do on the off years? Can you really bring out the All-Star game again? I know it's a local thing and there's still sponsorship, but are they going to do that? Like, can they do that with a straight face after what we just watched?
Well, I think they have to do something every year, and I think
sure,
if they do best on best tournaments too often, it's going to lose its special feel. I'm not a fan personally of how gimmicky the All-Star games and competitions have become, but I think the fans do yearn to see, all of the best players in the NHL on the ice at the same time. So I don't really see them deviating from their current format every second year. But if they can come up between Olympics and World Cups, several nation tournaments, if they can do that every second year, it's going to be a great, great thing for the game.
Yeah. One of the ideas we've had is just play Canada, USA, one game every year. But do you think that would dilute it too much?
I think so, and I don't think that's what the players want. I think that, you've got a healthy contingent of European players in the league that, enjoy wearing the emblem of their nation on their chest as much as Canadian and American players do. And I think if you want to sell the game worldwide, I think it needs to continue to be this format. And I, for one, would like to see games being played in Europe. If they can somehow manage to play games in Stockholm or Helsinki or anywhere else any other country that participates.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving right along here, Laurence, we're a week and 2 days, 9 days from the NHL trade deadline. Brock Boeser remains unsigned as a Vancouver Canuck. Our friends at AFP Analytics, who forecast contract length and value, and you've done this your whole career, so you tell me how you feel they do, but AFP thinks around 7 years at $9.3 million for Brock with the cap going up. Do you entertain that deal if you're the Vancouver Canucks? And if not, what's the plan?
Well, it's a little rich for my blood, personally. I have spoken my piece with respect to, or given you my opinion on Brock Boeser, and I don't want to take anything away from him because he is a very good goal scorer. He's got a great shot. He's got a great release, but he's not a great skater, and he doesn't drive play. And in my mind, as he ages in that deal, I think it would be detrimental to the Canucks going forward, irrespective of the size of the cap. And I think that's where, the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, in that I think if you're Brock Boeser or you're representing him, you're looking at a contract at least in that neighborhood. I mean, $8 million or more, and you want as much term as you can get. And I can understand why the Canucks would be reticent to sign a player of that age with that skill set for that long.
What's the max term you're going on him, Laurence?
I mean, there's what you want to do, and then there's what you probably have to do. I mean, for me, ideally, you'd like to sign him for 5 or 6 years. But I don't think that's going to fly. If you're representing him, why wouldn't you go to market at that point and see what else is out there? I mean, I think a lot of it depends on how things play out for him, whether the Canucks make the playoffs, how he performs in those playoffs. I mean, he could do himself a tremendous service by playing in the playoffs and performing very well and scoring some big goals. And, that could mean millions of dollars in his pocket.
If they go the trade route, what do you think he's worth?
Well, so I would say rebuild is not in the lexicon of the Aquilini family. And I say that with the utmost respect because I was one of the beneficiaries of their largesse and their will to win. I don't see any circumstances where the Vancouver Canucks are trading Brock Boeser for what I have referred to as IFCOM, a draft pick and a prospect. If they get to the point where they are going to make a move, I assume that they are looking for a younger player that's going to fit in their top 6, probably one that brings some speed to the lineup and some measure of goal scoring. That's not an easy deal to make. Because the team that would be acquiring Brock Boeser has no guarantee that they're going to have him going forward. Although you just saw the Canucks, or witnessed the Canucks did that very thing when they made the trade with Pittsburgh and promptly signed Pettersson and O'Connor. So I will be surprised if Brock Boeser gets moved at the deadline, but stranger things have happened. But I definitely wouldn't be moving him for a first-round pick and a prospect that's in junior or college hockey or playing in the American League. You've got to bring back something that's going to help this lineup today, help the team make the playoffs, and perhaps win a round or two once they get there.
You also have that inherent musical chairs risk, right, Laurence, that you trade away this guy, and even if you got good futures that you planned on flipping sometime down the road, there's no guarantee of those deals. There's no guarantee that you win the free agent sweepstakes as well. How much do you think this management group, or any management group really, when they're making these kinds of decisions, has to come to terms with the fact we trade away this guy, we may not find the replacement guy? You know, you've got to win one of those sweepstakes, and to win one of those sweepstakes, you got to spend large. There's that inherent risk too, right? The bird in hand is something.
Well, for sure it is, and it's infinitely more cost efficient to sign your own players in most cases, not always. But yeah, you have no guarantee. There's 32 teams competing for unrestricted free agents. And, you then get to geographical biases that sometimes occur. Sometimes American guys don't want to play in Canada. Sometimes Eastern, based players don't want to play in the West. And if you've got a guy who wants to be there and is a good teammate and, has done a lot for the community, it would behoove you to keep him here and keep him happy. Now, that being said, one must always be pragmatic, and you can't do a bad deal that's going to hurt you in the long run. And it's a delicate situation for sure.
The Canucks have been signing happy here, re-upping a bunch of guys, down roster guys like Drew O'Connor, a 1B goaltender, I guess, is what we call Kevin Lankinen these days as well. What have you made of all these signings and what it sets the Vancouver Canucks up to be here going forward?
Well, I think they've done a very good job, to be very candid with you. I don't know Emily Castonguay, but I know she's the point person on the deals. And I also know, as one who has been the point person on the deals, you're only as strong as the people that are standing behind you. And in that vein, Rutherford and Alvin deserve a lot of credit as well. But those three deals that they made quickly, they got Pettersson at 5.5 when he could have easily been at 6. They got O'Connor at 2.5 for 2 years when he could easily have been 3. And Lankinen, they got it at 4.5 when he could easily have been at 5.5 to 6 based on the comparable deals. I think they've done really good work over the last number of months, particularly during a very difficult time for the franchise. That there's been a lot of distractions and a lot of white noise and a lot of uprising in the media over the team, but they have quietly and efficiently gone about doing their business, and I think they've done a great job.
Does the Lankinen extension make Thatcher Demko expendable, in your view?
Not between now and the trade deadline. If I were calling the shots there, I think that, first of all, I'm not really a religious person, but I don't think God designed humankind to play goal. The types of physiological things that a body must do to play goal at any level, but particularly at the NHL level, I'm not surprised there are more goaltenders that have significant injury problems that are, recurring. In the case of Thatcher Demko, he's one of the top goaltenders. He's a top third goaltender in the National Hockey League when he's healthy. And, he could be healthy at any point in time. And if I were them, I wouldn't be doing anything. I would, you've got two great goaltenders. You're currently in a playoff. You're 1 point out of a playoff based on last night's performance of the Calgary Flames, but you're right there. I would hold on to him, and I would wait and see how the dust settles at the end of the season. And if Lankinen emerges as the number one guy, maybe you go to Los Angeles in the draft and you look to move Thatcher Demko at that point. But I certainly wouldn't be doing anything now.
Okay, Laurence. After the JT Miller trade, and Filipino is a nice player, but I think we can all agree, ideally he would be your third-line centerman. Setting Elias aside for a moment, and we understand that there's a big asterisk there.
A wild card there.
Presuming that Elias can be one of your top two centermen going forward, you've got a need for a top two center after the Miller trade. We're asking on our poll question, where do you get him? Trade, free agency, draft, or if you think anyone in-house can serve the role, could serve in the role. But what would you be looking at right now? What do you think is the best avenue to secure a top 2 center for these Canucks?
Well, they don't grow on trees, right? So
That's it.
Not an easy commodity to come by. I mean, there are players that are out there and organizations that are in rougher shape that are looking to make changes, and I would look to a team like Buffalo and a player like Dylan Cousins as an example of someone who might be on the market and might fit the bill for the Canucks. There's Casey Middlestad in Colorado, might be someone who's also on the market. Those are the players that are currently there with other teams that I think would look good in blue, green, and white uniforms. That being said, I don't know what else is out there in terms of free agency or who they have up and coming in their system, but they've definitely. I mean, the jury's still out on Philip Heel. He may very well turn out to be a second line center, but ideally, you would like to have a number. If you had a number 2, if you had a center position, and let's say Elias Pettersson is what Elias Pettersson's supposed to be, of Pettersson, Cousins, and Hedl down the middle, that's pretty good. Like, I think you'd be in good shape. So we'll see what they do.
At the age of 21, Trevor Zegras was a 65-point player. And for the last 2 seasons, he's played limited minutes because of injuries, but he's still been only on a 40-point pace at best. Is Trevor Zegras ever going to be what he was supposed to be when he was drafted 9th overall, do you think?
I don't know. He might. You have to be very careful when you're analyzing players that are playing for organizations that are in the downward part of their cycle. I've come to learn that players are never as good or as bad as they're playing at any particular point in time. And, it's been a star-crossed, road for Zegras in Anaheim to this point. And, there's an old adage, I think I've used it before with you guys, that when you're making a trade, you can never be sure of the player you're acquiring. So you better be damn sure of the guy you're giving up. I think if you're the Anaheim Ducks, if you're looking at Trevor Zegras, you don't know what you might be giving up. So that's a dangerous trade to do. And on the flip side, you're the Vancouver Canucks, you're hoping that a change of scenery is going to do this guy some good. And sometimes that happens. It's happened a lot of times actually in our business. So there's risk inherent with both sides to make a deal like that. But, that's hockey. When you make trades, there are no guarantees on what's going to happen for either team.
On Elias's struggles, Laurence, they've been so pronounced now for more than a year. Do you have any faith that we could see a turnaround this year, or do you think it's going to have to take an off season here for him to reset and come back to being the player he was, if you think that's still possible?
Well, I definitely think it's possible. You don't go from being a nearly 40-goal, 100-point center iceman to becoming a 50-point guy in 3 years or whatever the case is and suddenly lose your talent. Clearly, there is something wrong here, whether it's something that's physical, whether it's something that's psychological or emotional, situational. I don't know. As I've said to you guys on numerous occasions, I'm always one who believes in fixing your problems rather than getting rid of your problem. And in his case, this guy could figure it out in a week. He's got one of the best shots and best releases in the National Hockey League. And Rick Tocchet said it the other day, shoot the puck. If he starts shooting the puck and starts getting some success, this could turn around in an instant. I mean, he's a top skilled player, but there's something that's not right here that's causing his performance to suffer. And I do believe that I think, you can, if you trade every player that you're mad at, you'll trade yourself down to the bottom of the league in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be extremely patient. Now, that being said, I would evaluate him between now and the end of the season. And if things don't improve, then the Canucks are going to have a significant decision to make going into July 1 and free agency and the player getting a no movement clause.
Yep. Very wise. Some of the adages that we have gone to over the years in managing and trading.
But a lot of those adages, and we love them because you have given us so many. It's fun. Like a guy like Pettersson is testing the adages, right? Because
oh my God,
because there are a lot of proponents, Laurence, guys that have said, you're just what you just said. Like you just don't lose what you had, but even these guys are going. But this is a really long drought to go without it. Like he is testing the adages,
especially since in terms of fixing your problem, Laurence, They went out and got him a winger in Jake DeBrusk. Things didn't work out with JT. They moved JT. They've played him with, guys that he's friends with, Höglander and others. Like, they have gone a long way towards trying to fix the problem.
Too much
there.
patience eventually just makes you look like a fool, too, right? So you got to be careful.
They haven't found the remedy yet.
Well, no, clearly they haven't, but there's still cards left to play, as they say. And, they wouldn't be dealing from a position of strength at this point anyway. Although I am certain that there are teams that would be willing to take on this issue, gamble on it, because, they, like the Trevor Zegras conversation we had, there are teams and general managers that think if I get that guy out of that toxic environment that he's been in, whether it's because of what's happened in the dressing room or whether it's because of his disdain for the media, he will flourish and become the player he once was when he was young and naive with us. So, if you want to trade Elias Pettersson, there's a market for him out there. But again, you can make a trade like this and chase this player for the next 10 years easily.
Well, quite right. Which we're already talking about adding a top 2 center. To quote Kenny Rogers, hold them, fold them, walk away, run. But the dealing ain't done here. We still have cards to play. Laurence, great stuff. Great to see you here. Miss you over the last couple of weeks. We'll catch up next Wednesday, sir.
I feel like you guys only call me when there's disarray in the
No. Believe you me, it's
the sidelines.
It's not personal. It's just there's always disarray here.
Yeah.
Like we were talking. We do this with every guest, Laurence. Don't worry. We're not picking on you.
I'm not taking it personally. I'm merely stating an observation.
The Vancouver Canucks, newsmakers.
You were here. You remember how this market works. It's not quiet. It's we loud.
It's all good.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you extend your game night with a staycation. Downtown Vancouver. Book a Sick Harrison Price exclusive rate here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Well, we got some new friends to welcome to the program here, Blake, and a fun new weekly exercise that you'll be doing, and we encourage others to participate as well.
It's the Safeway My NHL Picks. Play it weekly. Your chance to win big prizes like a trip for 4 to a 2025 NHL season opener of your choice. A new slate of games opens up every Thursday. I'll be making my picks, sharing them with you as early as tomorrow.
We can ridicule together.
You can, but I'll be the one laughing. If I start to nail these picks.
Oh, we'll hear about it.
And, the more picks I nail, the more scene plus points I get. And then if you reach these certain milestones, I'm going to have my feet up somewhere on vacay.
Absolutely.
While you're talking about the Canucks fourth line centers. So
let's get a first one. Let's get a first line center in here.
All the centers. So be sure to play along. Safeway's My NHL Picks coming tomorrow.
Awesome.
Right here on Sick Harrison
Safeway's
Price.
like my home away from home. I am there quite often. Both the West 4th location and the McDonald and Broadway location. I know those stores like the back of my hand. In fact, they know my order at the deli counter. Now, she's prepared when I'm walking up. Oh, yeah, you're the guy who likes the Greek salad and the pakoras. And yeah, that's me. Okay. Some news to get to with a couple of our local teams here, and also an update from down the I-5. Brian White has extended his contract with Vancouver Whitecaps FC through 2027. I was surprised when you told me this. He is the highest scoring North American in Major League Soccer since 2021. The American international has been quite a find for the Caps.
He's not a sexy player league wide. Like he does not generate headlines. But each and every year, he provides you with the level of scoring you need from a striker. Now, he plays a different style of striker, too. Like, this is not...
he almost plays his own style of striker. I was thinking of it like, he's not the big, huge post-up guy, but he's got some of that. He's not the great foot, but he's got some of that. He's not necessarily your fox in the box, but he's got some of that. Like, he's a little bit of every sort of category you look for.
His head is his best weapon. He's amongst the best headers of the ball in the box league-wide. But that doesn't, again, generally get you the headlines. But ultimately what the Whitecaps care about is, does the ball go in the net off of some part of his body? And it does. So that's all that matters.
And, of course, the Whitecaps tomorrow, Thursday, against Deportivo Saprissa in the second leg of CONCACAF Champions League. And then the big MLS home opener Sunday at 2 o'clock start, everybody, against the LA Galaxy, the defending and reigning MLS champions.
And if you miss Axel yesterday, he didn't explicitly say that, although he hinted it strongly.
Yeah.
Folks, if you are worried about the future of the Whitecaps, nothing will look better to a potential suitor to buy the team, to keep it here, than your butts in the seats. Yep. I mean, it's just brass tacks. Yep. That is the case.
And look, they're already expecting a big crowd on Sunday. They're over 20,000. And as we have seen, the right day, the right time, with the team playing well, they can do some very healthy and fun crowds at BC Place. And after what we saw from Jaden Nelson in Portland, boy, itching to see this kid with my own eyes. Lions have completed their coaching staff. They have hired former Canadian Football League offensive lineman Christian Matt to coach their running backs. This guy had a splendid career, 14 years with the Montreal Alouettes, his home province team, won 2 Grey Cups, 2 All-Stars. So looking forward to the Lions getting going here in the spring. Down the I-5, we mused yesterday about that well-documented hour-long conversation between Pete Carroll, John Schneider, and head coach Mike McDonald on the outbound flight from Seattle to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. We wondered, was that Pete greasing the skids to get his boy Gino down to Las Vegas, where he's now coaching the Raiders? Well, John Schneider has met the media there in Indianapolis and has said he will meet with Geno Smith's agents this week to begin talks on an extension. Geno wants that extension. He said Smith is, quote, our guy. He also said he feels bad for the fans because it has been a couple of years without a playoff game there, and he said he wants to get Lumen Field back rocking again with a fast defense and running the ball on offense. I realize that second part may not land all that well with some Hawks fans. They're like, we're still going to run the football. We got rid of Pete, like smash mouth, old school dinosaur football. We have also learned Geno Smith cannot be at his best without a strong running game. And then some Google homework, as Blake would say. Our dear friend, Captain Greg Bell of the News Tribune, there in Indianapolis as well, he asked Pete Carroll a question about what his time in Seattle meant to him. And Pete's answer was just amazing. He talked about how he still lives there, about how an off season last year without having a coach allowed him to get around the community and meet people and understand the impact that his tenure, his Seahawks teams, the first Super Bowl champion, the Legion of Boom and all that made on the community. Go look that out. As we said, when he got hired by the Raiders, the NFL is better with Pete Carroll in it. Like, he is just a fabulous human being on top of being an excellent football coach. I don't know about you. I spent part of my evening last night diving into season 3 of Full Swing on Netflix, the reality series about the PGA Tour. Episode 2 explores the bromance between the Abbey boys, Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor. It is a fantastic episode. I was actually quite surprised that they spent as much time on these two Canadian
They need stories.
golfers.
They need good stories. They need good talkers, and those guys can provide all of that.
Absolutely.
Particularly Hadwin. So.
And both their families feature in it as well. The episode is based at the Zurich Classic in New Orleans. That's the only team event on the PGA Tour, and so guys partner up with a buddy and play best ball and play alternate shot. And, of course, Hadwin and Taylor formed a team last year. There is one scene sure to be relatable They're at a bar in New Orleans after their round, drinking beer, ordering wings, and Hadwin goes up to the barkeep and asks if they can put the hockey on a certain television. Canucks and Predators win the playoffs. You know that Nick and Adam had to watch their Canucks between rounds on the PGA Tour. And then, how about Luka?
Oh,
He goes for a triple-double against his old Dallas Mavericks teammates as the Lakers win the first game since that blockbuster NBA deal. Anthony Davis did not play for Dallas. There is a terrific still photo over Luka's left shoulder with a very stern-looking Nico Harrison, general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, staring right through him. There was also a clip of Mark Cuban nervously laughing after some of Luka's exploits last night. And how about the Lakers fans at Crypto? They were chanting, "Thank you, Nico," as Doncic was shooting his free throws.
and hey, delicious storylines, all that. They
That's
get the
what
win.
the NBA does. They deliver the drama, the storylines, the soap operas.
But Luka Doncic, despite the triple-double, is still, to me, a profound disappointment.
Oh.
What? Yeah. Considering where this guy
he dragged
could be.
this team to the NBA Finals last year, Blay. That was by no means a championship-level club, and yet there they were.
This is a guy that was traded because the Dallas Mavericks took a look at him and said, this is not a committed NBA player. He's 25 years of age, and he's acting like he's 34 and in retirement mode. After this game, in which he had the triple-double, but it was just 19 points.
Sorry, we're going to pick nits.
Yeah, I am going to pick nits. It's never been easier to get a triple-double in this league.
He's spicy today.
After, you know what he said in the postgame? It was exhausting. I need to go sleep. I'm looking so forward to sleep. Like this guy, he's on the retirement circuit already in the
emotionally
NBA.
drained. He did say he was glad it was over. Because remember, this is a guy who did not ask for a trade, did not want this. In fact, there's even some talk about whether he's going to re-sign with the Lakers. So
he's a
I'm sure
doughy-looking dude, and I'm very disappointed that he didn't say, I'm going to be a superstar in this league. He had that up until middle of last year, but even before he went on that run last year, I mean, that guy did not look like a superstar athlete, and he looks even less so now.
Some of them just have natural gifts, Blake, in bodies that don't necessarily look like your quintessential superstar.
And for Joker, that makes sense. But he has to be more dynamic than Joker.
Well,
that's not his.
He's on the ball trying to dribble drive
Right.
past people, whereas Jokic is not doing that as often.
Yes.
Jokic with a 19-assist game this week. 3 or 5.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, Luka has a penchant for beer and hookah. Likes to smoke the hookah. But having been around the NBA, there's a lot of guys who like to smoke something. And even back in the day when it was not legal in most jurisdictions.
We used to look at NBA players and go, that might be the most fit professional athlete you can find.
They're the best athletes in the world. Because they have everything that
Until
most
you
every
get to
other
Luka.
athlete has, and they've got height, right? They come in bigger packages. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you, what should the Canucks do with Brock Boeser? The options here were re-sign him, trade him, or keep him through the playoffs. What did the people say?
People said keep him through the playoffs.
No. 4% said that.
Really?
Trade got 62%.
62?
Re-sign got 34%.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Dario, not worth whatever he wants to sign for, trade him. Huey, you should keep people who score goals, especially now with Miller gone and Petey sucking. Yeah, we covered both those. Bobby Lou, this team has such a shallow pool of assets, and they're still thinking of losing them for nothing? Yeah, we covered that as well. And then Jay off the top rope, whatever Quinn Hughes wants them to do. Could you imagine going to your captain? Quinn, Brock wants this much. We're not willing to pay it. We don't think he's going to come down because we think he's going to get it from the Wild or someone else. What do you want to do here?
Well, those three are pretty close. I would be surprised if Quinn offers a poor review of Brock Boeser.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn, Elias, and Brock are pretty tight.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
I don't think he's jettisoning Brock Boeser from the organization.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. Cam Robinson wondered how many games for Brock Boeser. He's played 529 NHL games going into tonight against Los Angeles. And mentioned the historic U-Sport basketball Final 8, which is happening at UBC next month. Both the men's and the women's tournament at the same school. First time that has ever happened. I said, look, both UBC sides are looking good to get in. They get automatic berths. So they will both be in. And they are playing in the late window, the evening window, on the opening Friday, March 14th, of the U-Sport basketball eights. Anything to self-report, anything from the inbox?
No, nothing to report.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending time connecting with the show. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.